Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Church Solutions podcast. My name is Phil Thompson.
And I'm Michael Gray.
Michael Gray is with us today. Michael's been with us off and on since March. Steve Lacy is usually with us, and Steve is out doing something, riding his bike or working on his Mustang or something like that. He's probably not riding his bike since it's 108 degrees outside.
Yeah, 108 degrees. It's probably not today.
Not today, but actually, in all seriousness, he's doing something else. So we have Michael with us today, and in case you're new to us, we've been doing podcasts. We actually started doing video podcasts over 10 years ago, and we've been doing audio podcasts for 4 or 5 years as well. And we're a company. Actually, the company that we represent is StreamingChurch.tv. This is a podcast called Church Solutions Podcast, but we do mobile apps, we do website templates, church management stuff, and of course, as I mentioned earlier, streaming video. And today, what I thought we would do is Michael has been with us now since March, since the whole COVID-19 pandemic hit us. And I thought, since you're working with us and you're working with our customers, and I've known Michael for, well, we'll go into that a little bit, but 12 or 13 years I've known Michael now. And I thought it would be good for people to get to know you, Michael. And
Sure.
Because one of the things that separates us from other companies is the fact that we all have been involved and still involved in our churches and ministries, in leadership capacities, and that's what really makes us a little different from a lot of companies out there, because we understand what it's like to be on the other side, to be working with churches and be working with boards and tech teams and music teams and the whole gamut. We've done it all. I mean, I can safely say that about Michael and myself. And even Steve. Steve has done a lot of stuff. So with that in mind, I'd like you to get to know Michael a little bit. So Michael, let's start with the beginnings of who you are. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but you were born in Oklahoma?
That is correct.
All
I
right.
was born in Oklahoma City
All right.
a couple years ago.
Yeah, just a few
And,
years. And you're a preacher's
I
kid.
grew up
Are you a PK?
Early life, yes. I'm a PK. We moved around a lot, so I was in a lot of places in Oklahoma,
Right.
and then transitioned to Texas for the second half of my youth.
And what part of Texas were you in?
West Texas.
Ah, okay.
Grew up in the plains, out in the flatland.
So I remember speaking in not Waco. I actually did speak in Waco, but I spoke in what's those two little towns on the west part of Texas where the oil is? Of course, Texas has oil everywhere, right?
Well,
Can't think of the names here. As you go out.
There's Midland and
Midland.
Odessa.
Yeah, Midland and
Midland
Odessa
and
both. Yeah.
is kind of the hub of the oil center in West Texas.
I remember speaking there in the early 80s. So were you around that area, or is it somewhere else in West Texas?
Yeah, not too far from there. I was just outside of Lubbock, Texas.
Okay, yeah.
And then eventually, post high school, transitioned to Amarillo for a few years.
Yeah.
And then I went to Bible college in Colorado Springs.
Colorado Springs.
Did 15 years in Colorado, bouncing around from church to church as I worked. Actually spent all of those years working in the corporate world, and just did church as a volunteer for a lot of years.
Yeah. And then when I met you, I met you in Kansas, because I was transitioning out of a church I helped start in Kansas, Junction City, and you'd come out with Jeff Love, who was my former senior pastor in Tucson. So you were with Alive. You were on staff at Alive Church, and you had like 12 different titles, right, during your time at Alive.
I did. At that point, I was functioning as XP.
Okay.
Because we were multi-site, so the other XP went over to run a campus, and I was on the primary campus.
Yeah.
So Jeff and I flew out and met Phil and spent some time there, and that's the beginning of our story.
Yeah.
And there's the other beginning of mine and Steve's story, which is the beginning of StreamingChurch.tv.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the streaming thing, because when I got back to Tucson in 2008, I was hanging around Alive for a little bit before I came on staff, and I remember the streaming video was just starting up. I think we were working with Eric and those guys from Texas, and tell us a little bit about, because you have a lot of, so again, I'm setting this up for people because you have a lot of experience. Obviously, the tech world you do, but in the ministry field as well. So tell us a little bit about the streaming experience with Steve Lacy, our founder.
I was an elder at Alive. I typically was whatever needed to be launched or overhauled. That was kind of my deal. And so project management, basically in the church world. And we moved into a new facility. And when we moved in, Jeff and I had been talking for a while about launching an online campus. This is 2008, I think. 2008. Online campus. So I came on full time as the church online pastor. We had no online anything other than Steve had been doing recordings of the services, and we were putting the recording online.
Right. Okay.
So we did a little bit of search. I was coordinating a lot with Steve. We met Eric, and we started with them as our streaming provider, and it was just an embedded video on a page on the website, and they were our RTMP server company, and it was just that, a video on a page, and we were off and running with Church Online.
I remember that.
Yeah. And then let's see, Steve and I and Jeff always just kind of brainstorming, and we said, what if there was a platform around it? What if it had tools? What would those be? How could we make the online feel like somebody was walking into your church, where they're greeted, where they're cared for, all of their experiences. So that was kind of the beginning of StreamingChurch.tv.
Yeah.
Steve built all of that from the ground up, from nothing into this platform, which is now global, within a very short period of time. And for a good season, we definitely had some great times. People all over the world that streamed with us, and we're still connected to many of those folks that we met internationally as well as nationally.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, those early days. I was around in those early days, and not as much as you were involved, but I was kind of there, hanging out, lurking in the background, and I did end up becoming, I think, the church online guy, because you moved on to something else at Alive.
Yeah, I had another project, and you became church online, and you had to clean up all the messes I left behind.
It wasn't bad at all. I've cleaned up a lot of worse messes, trust me. What motivates you? We know. So when people talk to you, if they're interested in streaming video, or if they're already existing customers, you have that background and you have that good understanding. But what motivates Michael Gray? What lights your fire every day, Michael?
I get pretty excited about the idea of multiplication. So it's one of the things I love about StreamingChurch.tv is I can help one pastor at one church who may impact hundreds or thousands of people.
Right.
With a little bit of a time investment that can be multiplied many, many times over. And so it's a brilliant tool. StreamingChurch.tv is a brilliant tool. I love being part of it, because it fits a need I have to help people, and then to help people to, reach out to masses of other people.
Right. Yeah. That's definitely one of the primary motivations of all of us that are a part of this team is we have a desire to serve, and help people, and it's a great vehicle to be able to do that with technology. And of course, we not only have streaming video, we have mobile apps, and we have some content management things and some other ideas that we got cooking that kind of tie along with that. So you love helping people. So in your progression over the last number of years, I mean, let's take over the last 12 years. You have done the technology stuff, but you've been involved. You were executive pastor. You were, I mean, you really helped streamline operations.
Systems and operations are a big part of what I care about, because it's ironic. I saw something again today about measuring, and I just kind of flashed back to so many years ago. You can't improve anything you don't measure. So if you don't have systems in place that help you see how well you're doing, how can you improve if you don't know how well you're doing or how poorly you're doing? So that for me was something I wanted to get in place and help with, and I worked in that lane a little bit. I don't know if there's many areas other than children that I haven't been involved with.
Yeah. Same way with me, actually. It's kind of funny because, years ago, people would see me with my long hair and go, "Oh, you'd be great with youth." I'm like, I have no desire to help the youth. I have let somebody else.
Not my lane, man.
I've been recruited by pastors here in town. "Oh, you'd be a great youth pastor." I'm not. I've been speaking to adults for 40 years. I don't want to. Yeah, I mean, not that I don't have anything against youth. Trust me, youth
but
obviously
if it doesn't fit you,
it's not a fit, right? It's not a fit for me, and of course, I've never done any. Yeah, but it's interesting because we've done a lot of similar, and we both are into off-roading. We're both into Jeeps, you and I.
Yes, so, we have that in common. Yeah, we both have Jeeps. Yours is a little more awesome and classic than mine. I love the classic.
It's older. It sits in the driveway.
We're pretty serious and hardcore about our off-roading.
Yeah, we are, if I ever do it again. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit about systems, though, because I think that's important as we talk to people listening to this podcast. Most of the people listening, I assume, are church tech people, pastors, associate pastors, key volunteers, that have an interest in serving their church. Talk to me a little more about metrics and measurements, because that's so important. I mean, you might be a part of a staff meeting. You sit down Monday morning and go, "Well, how'd everything go?" Felt pretty good. Yeah, I felt pretty good about it.
Man, I got warm and fuzzy because it feels really good.
Yeah, but that's not a good indication of if you're really making.
Warm and fuzzy. Fuzzy does not necessarily equate to changed lots.
Yeah, I mean, it's better than a disaster, I guess, than feeling anxious and, oh my God, something terrible happened. But so how do you use metrics? And I know we're getting off, but this is part of you, so I want people to get to know you. Absolutely. So how do you use metrics? I mean, like a typical Monday morning meeting, maybe with the staff or the senior pastor, how do you use metrics? I mean, how many people showed up?
Let me use the example of when I did Church Online. So our goal, so we got together and we decided where we were going and why we were going there. Okay, we started with that. And then we said, okay, now how do we measure that? And so for us, it was, number one, we want somebody to come to Church Online. That's awesome. And then we want them to have an amazing experience. And then we want them to transition to a regular attender of Church Online or to transition and walk in the door. Right. It's okay if they never walk in the door, if they're rural or if they're homebound or whatever that may be. But the goal was for people to progress and take a next step and move forward. And it wasn't that they needed to walk in our door. They needed to walk in a door. So if they lived in the middle of nowhere in Nebraska and they decided they wanted to begin to engage with people face to face, we found a church for them there. So the idea was, if you don't measure that, if there's no measurement of those steps, you don't know if you're succeeding or failing at what you plan to do.
Yeah.
If you hope to get people to connect with somebody face to face eventually, if you don't measure how many people did that,
Right.
then you just say, I think we did good, I hope we did good, versus no, last month 6 people made a transition to a full-time attender online or a full-time attender in person.
Yeah.
And so that's why, people get really upside down and kind of sideways about measuring. You got to measure what matters, or you have zero idea if you're having success.
Yeah, that's true. I've heard, and this goes way back, but I've heard people, even pastors. This is, this is being recorded during the COVID-19 thing here. So some people are opening their church doors up, and some are not, and some who are open are still having to stream because not everybody's comfortable. Especially there's a spike going on in 23 or 24 states right now. Arizona's one of them. But I remember years ago somebody saying, well, I don't count how many people show up Sunday morning to the church. I just don't count that. God's not interested in numbers. Of course, the old joke is, well, if God's not interested in numbers, why did he? Why do we have the book of Numbers in the Bible? But that's just a joke. But
it isn't. It isn't.
But
numbers are important.
They are.
Numbers are important in the Bible too.
And one of the points I always made was, okay, well, do you count the offering? Well, yeah, we count the offering. Well, you count the offering, but you don't count the people. And you don't count how many people have committed their lives to God. You don't count how many people are involved in a small group. You don't count how many people, and so we measure what we think is important. And I think it's important for us to really keep that in mind, that, people matter and numbers do matter. We're not in it for the numbers per se, those of us in ministry, but we're in it to connect with people, to reach people, and numbers are an indication, as you just said earlier.
Absolutely. I want to know, okay, when I get through a year, how many people did we get to take a next step?
Right.
I hope our teaching, I hope our online, I hope everything that we did, all of the energy, all the volunteers, all of the finances that we spent are accomplishing the goal that we set out, which is helping somebody going from today to a next step in the right direction tomorrow, and how successful that was. That doesn't mean I don't value people. It means I really value people.
That's right. Yeah.
And I want to make sure I'm giving all of my best, and so is all of my team. Yeah.
And I think it's important, too, when we talk about next steps. For some people, some pastors will say, well, the next step is to get somebody saved. Well, not necessarily. I mean,
that's the first step, or a second step, or a third step.
Yeah, I mean, the first step might be to get them to watch online. The second step might be, can they come into your, are they comfortable enough to come to your facility? If you're having, we're talking, we're presupposing we're not doing COVID-19 right now, but, a step might be, to move them along until they commit their life to God, and then after they commit their lives to God, the journey continues.
Then what?
You can't just
done.
Right, exactly.
Job's not done. It's just started.
It's just starting. So I like the fact when we use the word steps, because for everybody it's different. Yeah. It's different steps for different people, and not everybody's in the same place. And it takes them a while depending on where they're at and where they're going. So that's good. So all right. So anyhow, so you're motivated. Just from knowing you over the years, you're motivated to help people. You're motivated to really to help systems get people to the goals. The ultimate goal is a relationship with God, but growing too, as we just said, growing spiritually. And those systems are tools, which take a little bit of effort to build, but once they're built, then the next thing is just really maintaining, right? I mean, I think somebody listening to this might go, where do I start? But and that's hard. But once you do start, I think that's probably the hardest. And then the next step would be, okay, we just want to continue to maintain and make sure that we're recording once we have these systems in place. Okay, how many people showed up? How many people going to small groups? Am I right on that thinking?
Yeah. And to that end, there's some really great analytics built into the Streaming Church platform. I'm really appreciative. We helped shape some of those at our local church, and Steve has built those. But we were just having a conversation yesterday of we care enough about people that we don't want them to leave. We don't want them to disappear and us not notice it. So we want to be able to track that in a way. Some churches call that the back door. We don't want people sneaking out the back door unnoticed. We want to at least be able to say, "Hey, we love you. Is there anything wrong? Did we do anything wrong?" We want to make sure that we care for you and love you in a way that is meaningful. So, we would look at that. Is there a possible way to measure that where we would get a notification or something? So it is for the intent of caring for people better, even though it is a number. It's a number, but it's a number that helps me keep people from wandering away and losing their path and wandering off the path.
Yeah, and you're speaking in the context of online, but the back door, as you mentioned earlier, it's one of the biggest challenges. I've been in ministry like you for years, and that's always the biggest challenge, in my opinion. We can get people in the door. Getting them in the door is fine, but when they wander off, how do we shut that back door, so to speak? And when we say shut it, we just mean, how can we keep people where they're just not, where they're not dissatisfied and they leave. I mean, if people want to leave, they leave, right? But you just don't want to, as you just said earlier, you want to make sure you're taking care of people. And if they leave, you want them to leave for the right reasons, not because somebody dropped the ball and didn't call them back or didn't minister to them when they had a need, So,
didn't email, didn't call, didn't whatever. Those are things we can fix if we know. If we know what's going on. And I would say, Phil, it's been exponentially exacerbated in the last decade that now I don't even know if it would be the back door. I think the whole back of the building is open because people are in migration patterns, and they move from church to church to church to church. And there's just a different kind of idea of what church is, and we won't go down that rabbit hole too deeply. But if you don't have a plan in place, and you don't have a strategy, and you don't have systems and processes in place, then you're just kind of throwing up your hands and say whatever will happen will happen. And for me, that's just not okay.
I don't like that method either, and it's we definitely, there has to be some clear communication, and we probably should. We've talked about this in the past. It's been years ago on this podcast, but we should probably revisit that again because it is important. It's so important that people, that you have a good understanding, and a lot of this has to do with defining who you are as a church and your goals. And communicating that effectively to the people that come in the door. But anyhow, all right, good. Well, so we're basically out of time. I feel like we just started, but
I know. Having fun.
Well, we can do this again. But I wanted people to get to know you a little bit, because you're on the chat. People can chat with you at StreamingChurch.tv most of the time, unless you're gone somewhere and then they're stuck with me. But and you're also on the phone, so. If we can help you, Michael touched on some of these things. He gave us a little bit about his experience in church work and streaming video. But if you even have questions about metrics and about, what crazy thing are you talking about here, I'm sure Michael would be happy to meet with you. So just reach out to us. Probably the best way to reach out to us, folks, would be support at StreamingChurch.tv. It's StreamingChurch.tv. That's probably the best way. And we'd love to get your feedback on this podcast, and we'd love to get to know you. And if we can help you in any way, we don't just do streaming video, we do mobile apps, we do other things as well. We've been doing this since 2001. Almost 20 years now. Almost 20 years. going on
Yeah,
here.
next
So
year is going to be the Big
yeah.
20 celebration.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait for that. But your church was the first church to start using these products. My church was the second one in Kansas, and
That's awesome.
so it's kind of fun to see how things have happened over the years and grown. So, all right, so we're done. Michael, thank you again. It's a pleasure to work with you again.
My
It's
pleasure.
great. It's
Yeah.
great working
Love
with
it.
you. And again, folks, during this difficult time, we just hope and pray that you're doing well, and we hope that you will take care of yourself and take care of those that you love. So for Michael Gray, my name is Phil Thompson, and on behalf of Steve Lacy, we wish you well. We'll catch you again next time on another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast. Take care of yourselves.